Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming. So this is our second installment in our workshop series titled Careers in Social Impact Tech. So if this is the first time you're here, welcome. We had a previous workshop that was kind of just an intro to what careers in social impact tech can look like. And now we're really excited to have our awesome career panel with a bunch of super cool professionals in lots of different fields within careers in social impact tech. So we can give some brief introductions, but we're really excited to have everyone here. You can go ahead and stop sharing, Maya, and then I will introduce our panelists. Thank you, thank you. Wow, so many beautiful faces, love to see it. So awesome, so our first panelist is Erin Mayer. Erin's the founder of Impact Labs, which is a platform to inspire engineers to use their skills for common good. And he's also the director of the Effective Altruism Community in New York City. We're super excited to have you, Erin. Erin's going to talk a bit more about, about his role once we get the panel started. Next, we have Valerie Acker. Valerie's the Impact Manager and Development Associate for 9 Dots. And 9 Dots is a computer science educational nonprofit. Working specifically within the K through 6, so elementary levels to create some bomb computer scientists. We're super excited to have Valerie here. And then we have Jonathan Villiard and Carl Scheller. They both work at Digital Humani, which is a volunteer group that provides an API for reforestation, which is super awesome. We love that. Jonathan is the founder and a solutions architect of Digital Humani, and Carl is a software engineer. So we're super excited to have you both here and to hear about all the awesome things that you're doing within clean tech and sustainable solutions. And last but not least, we have Ahmed Hashem, who is a technical recruiter at the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative. And Ahmed is currently focused on the Science and Education Division and was previously focused on the Justice and Opportunity Division. So super varied, we love to see it. So we're so excited to have all of our panelists here. And I think we can start off with our first question, and Maya is gonna take it away and I will start spotlighting.
Yeah, and for the audience members, if you have any questions, please feel free to put them in the chat. And also we'll have like a Q&A session after. I forget if Ashley already said this, sorry. So our first question for everyone is, could you tell us a bit about yourself and your interests outside of your career or whatever initiative you're here for? Because for example, Digital Humani is a volunteer organization. And can you also talk about what your journey has been like to this career in social impact tech? And we will decide the order that the panelists go in. So our first panelist to answer this question is Ahmed. If you could talk about that, that would be great.
Yeah, of course. So my interest outside of my current work is really building capacity for historically marginalized communities. I initially started my first job ever working for a nonprofit organization that was focused on basically providing resources for immigrant communities that come to San Francisco. And from there, I got the opportunity to meet a lot of different people from different walks of life who, come with families that have immigrated to the States, whether they're first generation immigrants or second generation, and really learn a lot about their cultures, their food, their music, and eventually became a DJ on the side where I do a lot of international music. My first language is Arabic, so I definitely do a lot of Arabic music as well as hip hop. Growing up in San Francisco, that was like something that I was really passionate about, as well as like Spanish, Indian, Afghan, Turkish, you name it, all that fun stuff.
Oh, that's so cool. And then next up, if Jonathan and Carl could answer the question, I'll just repeat it. Can you tell us a bit about yourself and your interests outside of your career and what your journey has been like to this career in social impact tech? And I know for you guys, this is a digital humanity is like a volunteer thing. So if you could talk about that, and then also maybe your career, that would be awesome.
Yeah, all right. So I can take that one. Well, for me, the environment and climate change have always been a concern. And about 7 years ago, my wife and I decided to go live in Costa Rica for 4 months with our 3 kids, then about 9 to 12 years old. So of course, we did not want to spend the whole 4 months just going to beaches. So we did some volunteering too. Amongst other, we work in an orphanage, work at a sea turtle project, and help in a reforestation project. Being concerned with climate change, back home I began some research related to reforestation and learned that most reforestation organizations required only $1 to plant a tree. At the same time, cloud computing was getting popular, and also mobile games offered in-app purchase for only a few dollars. And then I thought people, of course, will not log on a reforestation website every day to pay $1 to plant a tree. But if this is offered from an app, it will be very easy to pay only $1 and get a tree planted in real life. So basically all we needed was an API. So I discussed the idea with some reforestation organizations, and of course they did not know what an API was. When I talked to enterprise or mobile app developer, they knew about API, but they did not know that trees could be planted at only $1. So this is how began my journey 3 years ago in social impact tech. And about a year later, Digital Humani was created with its reforestation as service API available freely to all. All this from a group of highly motivated IT people, all wanting to help climate change. And as for my, since we're doing this on a as volunteers, my day job is working as an IT consultant in Montreal. So I mostly work borrowing jobs in banks, financial institution, and insurance company. So that's it.
Very cool. And I guess, Carl, I think you've also founded an ed tech company. So, and you work in open source now. If you wanted to talk, like maybe say a couple words on that.
Sure. Yeah. Out of college, I helped found a ed tech company that as students, you guys might be familiar with. It's a remote proctoring company. So it was really cool to work at, a company from the startup, but from the beginning, but kind of the mission of the company after a few years was really not fulfilling. And so that's kind of why I decided to leave and look for something that had a larger social impact. So last year, I ended up finding Digital Humani through Climate Action Tech, which is a really cool organization for just, people in software and those kind of fields who are, working towards climate solutions. And I found Digital Humani there, and I ended up connecting with Jonathan and volunteering. And ever since then have been spending a lot of time helping with the project and trying to help it grow from the point where it is to hopefully, planting thousands, tens of thousands, millions of trees in a month or a couple months or whatnot. So it's been an awesome journey. I really like it. It's easy to get motivated and work when when the end goal is planting trees and making the world more green. So that's a brief synopsis of how I got here.
That's great. And okay, the next panelist is Valerie. I know that you have more of a career that's kind of tangential to tech. So if you could talk about your path toward that and like the interest that led to that.
Yeah, thank you. So I work for 9dots, and I found 9dots. I actually did City Year. I don't know if any of you have heard of it. It's an AmeriCorps program. So I did that right out of college. I just wanted to go and work in schools. I wasn't sure if I wanted to be a teacher yet, and that kind of opened my eyes a little bit more to the inequities in the education system. And through City Year, we actually partnered with 9dots, which is the company I currently work with. So that's kind of how I found it. And I mean, there are a lot of issues with our educational system, but one of them that I think is, arguably is the most pertinent is like the lack of CS education and how it's really focused at this point in predominantly white schools. And it's really not, it's not offered in a lot of like inner city schools and less lower economic schools. So that's kind of my motivation to get into working with 9 is to help close that tech equity gap and starting in the sphere that I love, which is education. Outside of work, I work a lot in my community. I work at like a farmer's market, and really like spending time just like with friends. I've run 2 marathons, but not this year, obviously. But those are my general interests. But yeah, one day I'll go to a concert and maybe I'll hear you DJ. But that's it.
That's great. It's great to hear about everyone's interests outside of everything else. And then finally, Aaron.
Sure. Hi, everyone. First of all, thank you so much for organizing this. This is amazing. And thank you all to the folks who are attending this. That really reflects well in your character that you would elect to spend an hour with us, just like choosing to learn about us and find out more. So thank you for coming. My specific journey, I was always interested in philosophy, specifically ethics. I think that's just like morality is life's great puzzle. And so I would lie awake at night thinking about like ethical dilemmas and trolleys and all these big problems. And I was like, ah. And then I went to college and all my friends were in the computer science department, even though I was studying philosophy. And we noticed, I remember once the big moment for me was when my friend Nate, he got a job offer at Snapchat. We were sitting together at the dining hall. And he was like, hell yeah. He didn't say hell. I just got a job offer at Snapchat. And I was like, bro, you're such a genius and you're so kind and empathetic and warm and charming and fabulous. Like, why should you be like, why are you working for Snapchat? Like, surely there's better uses of your time and talent. And so a very good friend and I, we started this company, Impact Labs, which gets computer scientists to ask those big questions and try and think about how they can leverage their time most effectively for the good of humanity. And that also led me into the effective altruist rabbit hole. So we could talk about that maybe a little later. But that's really how it started. Like my journey really started of this frustration that my good friend was like working away and wasting away at Snapchat.
Yeah, that's awesome. And I personally, like even before all of this, I've been a fan of Impact Labs for like a year now. So thank you. And I guess I'll pass it off to Ashley for the next question.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone. So our next question is, there's definitely, I think we all know this, there's definitely a more like traditional tech path. Aaron kind of just brought it up as well, like going into big tech. Can you give us kind of one pro and one con of pursuing a path like the one that you're on, as opposed to maybe a more traditional tech career path? And we can go ahead and start that off with Jonathan and Carl. I know, Jonathan, you in your kind of like full-time job also maybe have a more traditional kind of career. So maybe you can speak to that difference as well. But yeah, absolutely, please take it away.
Yeah, I can talk a little bit about that. Well, the more traditional way that I do work for right now, meaning working for big companies, is that I would say it's easier and the pay is always stable, and it's a kind of a regular jobs that you know you will have your weeks of vacation every summer, and all that goes with a regular job. But the only difference, I would say, well, at least for me, it's not really a fulfilling job, because working for a bank, they tell you at the end of the year that they made 10 billion this year, and hopefully they will make 11 billion the next year by cutting costs and firing people. So it's really, I would say, not fulfilling at all. So it was quite interesting for me to be able to work on something that I believed in. And what is good with tech is that you can apply your knowledge to work on something that you like, because tech is everywhere. I guess it would not be the same if I had a different path, or yeah, different kind of jobs, I would say. Yeah.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I definitely feel like that maybe lack of fulfillment feeling is what a lot of us are like fearing if we do end up in those kind of situations. So I'm glad people are thinking ahead and are here with us today and thinking about that. Awesome, thank you. Carl, did you want to speak a little bit to that as well?
Sure, yeah, I can add on. I'll say that like a caveat is that obviously for me, this is not really a full-time career yet. It's, more of a volunteer effort and stuff like that. But Originally I did kind of follow a more traditional career path. I did go work for a startup after I got my CS degree, and I did really love it. I learned a lot, and I guess, again, like I said earlier, I just kind of felt over time I was looking for a little bit more fulfillment from the work. And I think I found that now, which is great. I would say probably overall the biggest pro for working in anything social impact is just knowing that what you're doing is making a positive impact, real change in people's lives. So besides that, I would say a good pro is that it's been really nice to work with a team where it's like everyone's aligned and motivated to the same goal. And that goal is whatever the large goal of the organization. You're not really worried about people who are trying to half-ass it to get a paycheck or, anything ulterior like that. Everyone's really aligned and motivated. So I really value that. In terms of a con, I think just overall instability. There's always, a fear of funding falling out, lack of solid revenue streams, at least, at the point where we're at or where I've seen so far. You're not going to be part of a big tech organization where there's massive teams and, really established workflow cycles. So there are those fears, but, there's also a balance where, that offers the ability to kind of do more and be more creative. So yeah, that's about it.
Awesome, thank you. Yeah, I definitely, just from my own experience of the computer science classes that Maya and I probably have taken so far, there's definitely a very competitive spirit to that.
Right.
So it's really reassuring to hear that there is that level of collaboration and that
Definitely.
unity towards a common goal that you mentioned. Thank you. So if Aaron, you want to take a stab at that question as well about kind of a pro and a con of that traditional.
Keep in mind, by the way, I'm not a software engineer. I'm not, so I can't speak to I'm in the tech role, but I can speak because I've seen hundreds and hundreds, at this point thousands of folks who have taken that role, and I can tell you there's obviously the biggest benefit in my estimation, in my observation, has been the challenge with big tech companies is that they're coming to you, and so it makes things very easy, and so it's kind of this default path. But of course, that makes it somewhat less intentional. It's this is water of the tech company. It's just you don't even realize that they've come to you right away, and then you're just accepting and acquiescing the roles that they've given you, as opposed to actually being intentional with what you want to do with your career, which is a huge amount of time that you could dedicate to doing something positive. And so I really kind of, I don't know, the metaphor I've used before is if you're sitting in a bar, waiting for someone cute to come over, you could bat your eyelashes and adjust your hair. But eventually, if you want to talk to the cute person, you gotta get up and go. Otherwise, you're just gonna wait for someone else to come and hit on you first. It's you don't want that. Google and Facebook and Goldman Sachs and JP Morgan are all coming up and hitting on you. And it's sure, it's nice and validating and they're coming with their big sweet paychecks, but if that's not what you want, then that's not what you should settle for. And so going out and seeking what you actually intentionally want, I think that if you get it, that's the biggest benefit, because you know that is you've pursued it. It's yours. It's your baby. You are constructing the career path that you want. On the flip side, I will say that especially for young college grads, getting Facebook on the resume is not good qua getting Facebook on the resume, but it really is good to learn a lot of mistakes on other people's dimes. You don't want to necessarily work on a really high impact startup and then botch it because you're a junior developer who doesn't really know much. It's okay. It's okay to take a job at Google or Goldman or any of these places. It's really fine. I would just say don't get complacent, because it's so easy to get complacent. And I know so many friends who are making $150,000, or if they're working in the brain computer interfaces division, then they're making $350,000 a year, and they're 23-year-olds, and it's really hard to walk away from that. But it's do you really just want to be working on a BCI program for Facebook that helps? I don't know. It's just be intentional. I think that's the biggest lesson, and the biggest kind of division of what I would see is what will lead to someone being really happy and what will lead to someone not being so fulfilled in their career. So those are the flip side of the plus and minus.
I love that. Thank you. Yeah, Maya and I have had these conversations as well of what do we want? And I think that's a really important thing to figure out, because it's weirdly not emphasized. It's that pressure of get an internship and get all this experience before you finish college, but it's not figure out what you like and what you don't like and what you want and what you want to do after that. So that's really valuable. Thank you. Valerie, do you want to take that question next?
Yeah, I can go ahead. Similar to Aaron, I'm not a computer scientist or have not studied it and didn't come from that background, but I would say like that is a pro into going into some of these other professions. Like if you wanted to get into a tech nonprofit, you don't necessarily have to have that background in CS. And my nonprofit specifically actually trains our employees. Like they'll come on and be teachers in the classroom, but they'll simultaneously get trained and learn and gain CS skills. And we've gotten to the point now where we've been around for like around 9 years, where most of our, I think 100% of our engineers have all been kind of like grown up in 9 dots and now have become like the head software engineers of everything that we do. And they really learned it while simultaneously teaching in classrooms that otherwise probably wouldn't have had a tech education. So that was really cool. I mean, when I was thinking about like a pro and a con, I don't know about where else y'all work, but our organization is just very small. And I feel like a lot of these other paths can be a little bit smaller, more homegrown. And there's definitely pros and cons to that. I would say like a con is obviously stability. You have to worry about, especially in a nonprofit world like where I'm at, we have to worry about making sure that donors, especially like COVID hits and we lose a lot of donations from some of our big donors, and that becomes a huge issue. There also might be less mobility within the company because there aren't as many positions that open up. Like our company, again, it's like 20 people. But a pro is like you really have a lot more input. I don't know what it's like working in big tech, but now I know that like I can give feedback that can affect like the whole program. And I know I can sit down with my executive director and have like, and she'll hear me out and hear what's happening. And so there's a little bit more of like more connected to the day to day, and you feel like you have a little bit more leeway in making change and being heard.
That's actually awesome. I haven't thought about that as an aspect before. So I think of an aspect of like a career, but I think that's also really valuable is figuring out kind of what like not what position you want as a title or a role, but kind of what position you want in terms of relationships and, like you said, connectivity and everything like that. So awesome. Thank you. And Ahmed, do you want to finish that question off for us, please?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there was definitely a lot of really things that really resonated with me from the panelists that was actually shared. And, you know, on the recruiting side, you know, I've worked in agencies where we were like a third party recruiting agency helping an organization fill roles. And I've worked at startups where we were scrappy is the word I was looking for, not the other one. A scrappy organization with only 50 employees, and you know we're really scrambling to like create to really make sure that our product is solid and we're eliminating vulnerabilities and all of that. And then from there went to LinkedIn, which is, you know, another name in big tech. And before I came to CZI. And so throughout that journey, I was able to have those candid conversations with hiring managers and with engineering leadership. And, you know, there's a lot of unfortunate discriminatory practices that plague the hiring of engineers even, which is, you know, in Silicon Valley, engineers are like gold. And so even then there's a lot of discrimination that happens, you know, against people either from different communities, or if they have gone to specific schools, or they came from even working at you know, some of the unknown organizations or, you know, startups, et cetera. And there is this weird obsession with the name brand, you know, tech companies and the name brand academic institutions. And for me, that has always been unsettling for me, because my reason for going into talent acquisition is for the social justice fight. There are a lot of highly qualified individuals and candidates that don't necessarily get an opportunity to even interview simply because of their name, of where they went to school, of the last company that they worked in. And that to me has been, it's a very classist system. It's a way to maintain kind of the status quo. You only get people who have access to these academic institutions, for example. And the big tech companies hire from these, you know, name brand institutions. And so let's be real about it. Who has access to these opportunities? Most Black and brown communities and immigrant communities and people who actually are first generation college graduates or attendees don't necessarily know how to navigate their way through that system. They're literally doing it, on their own. And so the plus side of actually working for the Chan Zuckerberg Initiative, for example, is that we're a philanthropy, backed by billionaires, which is really nice to not have to worry about some of the other challenges that nonprofits have to worry about. And before I was in tech, I was in the nonprofit world. And so knowing that struggle and being in this organization now where we have, a plethora of resources, it's really nice to be able to just focus on the impact. However, the rest of the panelists, when you're talking about, not knowing where funding is going to come next, the instability, all of that, like that really resonates with me. And I feel like we have to be mindful when we say things about, when we discourage people from going to either the big institutions or what have you and going into just social good, is that that's a place of privilege. Not everyone can actually go right out of school and go into one of these low-paying nonprofit organizations or really create something from scratch. Because if you're a first generation college graduate or attendee, you have student loans that you have to pay back. You have family members who depend on your success as well in this journey, so you can take care of them. So that's basically the double-edged sword, is that you have to be really honest with yourself. And maybe it does take spending the first couple of years of your career really working, in these big organizations and being able to accumulate enough capital or enough resources to be able to really now focus on, tech, that's helping people.
Thank you. Yeah, that's really cool to hear, because I feel like definitely that cycle that you mentioned is really a problem, and it definitely exists. And it's interesting just hearing about that, because I feel like we always hear that we should try and value the big companies, the big names, the big name institutions. We all go to UCLA here. And it's something that maybe we can unlearn if that's what we want to, like if we want to value different things. So awesome, thank you. So I'll pass it off to Maya for our next question.
Yeah, and I guess before we move on, one thing that I want to say, I think that I forgot which panelist said it, but something I was thinking about was how, at least for UCLA, a lot of the things that they like flaunt to get people to come to the engineering school is like how many big end companies that like a lot of these computer science majors work for after they graduate. So I think changing that perception, like, yeah, maybe only a few are going to big end companies, but our engineers are all really happy. Like shifting what qualifies as a successful engineering school, I think would be a cool way to see some of these perceptions changed. And then so for our last question, so we're trying to get questioning finished by 5:35 p.m. PST. It's currently 5:32, so I'm gonna unfortunately have to ask you guys to go rapid fire. But our final question is, what are some tips that you have for students who want these jobs that you have, or maybe some jobs in the tech and social impact space in general? And I guess we'll start off with Valerie.
Yeah, I mean, I think it just like being really connected to a mission, especially in a nonprofit world, it's really what matters, because you might not get paid that well, and you might face other trials and tribulations. So it's all about like really knowing what you're passionate about. And there are so many issues that we can tackle right now in this day and age. And so find the one that personally drives you, and you wake up and you're determined to try to fix it. So
yeah, that's great. And Aaron?
Sure. My answer to this is cheap tests. Like there are tons of ways to kind of get a feel for like what a career might be like. And so a lot of that is just like picking up the phone and calling people who you think have that job, sending cold emails to like 10 people who have similar jobs and trying to get experience with them and like feedback. What's more is that kind of leads into the second answer, which is if you're vocal about what you're passionate about and really, really loud about it, like people will start associating you with that type of passion. If you're like, oh, I'm the climate change gal, it's like people are going to know that you're the climate change gal, and it's like they're going to talk to you when they have questions about climate change, or like, and so then when you like come to a company or an organization, or when you ideally, better yet, start your own organization, people are going to know, they're going to flock to you because they're going to be like, oh, this person's really loud and vocal about it. I really do think that writing is like one of the best things you could do for your own career. If you just like, even if it's your thoughts on a Medium page, it's like get some sort of like public digital footprint of like your thoughts so that people can know and be like, wow, this is the person who really cares about X. This is the person who really cares about Y. And then also do those cheap tests, because you don't know what those careers are going to be like, but it's very, very easy. And people are so willing to help. And they're like, the folks who are in these positions of power are surprisingly earnest when it comes to like mentoring. Maybe it's because their ego gets massaged or whatever, but just like reaching out to them and saying like, hey, I'm interested in having your job one day. Like, I'd love to talk to you for 30 minutes. Like, you'd be shocked at how many yeses you get if you just ask. The trouble is 99% of people don't ask.
Awesome. Yeah, thank you. And Jonathan and Carl, if you guys want to take this one. Or sorry, wait, I have to go in order that way. Ahmed is next. Sorry.
Yeah, I think, sorry, repeat the question one more time. My brain just went blank.
Yeah, no worries. The question is, what are some tips that you have for students who want perhaps the job that you have, or just jobs in the tech and social impact space in general?
Absolutely. I think Aaron hit that one right on the head with the just be yourself, be your authentic self. I think what I've done in my career is I've always showed up with a social justice and racial equity lens to every job I've ever had. And that's gotten me in trouble, actually. That's gotten me fired before. And I am proud to say that I was fired from that institution because it just didn't sit, with my values. And a lot of times that you will get, the sell, you will get, all of that but if you are intentional and you really voice your intentions really early on in the interview process, et cetera, then you will be associated with that. And if an interview is a two-way street, just continue to remember that an interview is a two-way street. You're interviewing them just as much as they're interviewing you.
Wow, that's great. I have a feeling that I might be fired for the same reasons from a future job, but we'll see what happens. And then finally, Jonathan and Carl, if you want to take that question.
Yeah, I can comment a little bit, but it goes in this about the same that the answers from Ahmed and Aaron. I mean, you gotta tell the employer what you want, because these guys don't know. They want to hire young people, but they don't know what they want. So if you don't tell a thing in the interview, they will say the same things that they usually say, meaning, oh yes, we have a great pension plan and you'll be able to work overtime, or whatever this is that they think that you might want. So they are really impressed if you tell them what you want, and sometimes they will find you the right place in the enterprise, and this is good for them, this is good for you, because if you're happy there, the chances are that you will stay there longer.
Awesome. Yeah, Carl, go for it.
Yeah, I'll keep it quick and just my experience. What I kind of found interesting when looking for something with social impact was it seemed that people tend to build communities around kind of objectives like this kind of stuff. And so I referenced earlier Climate Action Tech, which is literally just a bunch of people who are like, hey, we care about the climate and we're in tech and what can we do about it? And that was just one of the few communities I found online by doing some research. And so I just ended up reaching out to those communities, joining them, getting involved a little bit. And it led me to, to get involved with Digital Humani. So just kind of, put your feelers out and see what you can do to get connected to the people you're interested in working with.
Awesome. Thank you guys all so much for answering our questions. And then we'll go into audience questions now for like 15-ish minutes, kind of, maybe a little bit less. And Ashley, I'm just gonna do the first question, if that's okay, that I saw. Back a while ago, George asked, if you're interested and passionate about a high impact project or startup, but you feel like you don't have the experience to ensure you won't botch it, what can you do? And as a second part, how do you leverage gaining experience in workflow slash management without losing your momentum out of college? And Aaron.
Can I answer this one?
You want
Yeah,
to
especially
answer
because I don't mean to sound like, oh, you're going to totally botch it. Like, first of all, you're much more capable and competent than you think and give yourself credit for. The other thing is about time. You don't have to worry about so much losing momentum. Like, life is pretty damn long. And like these skills that you're learning now in college are going to stay with you for a very long time. And so it's like, you don't have to be like an overnight success by the time you're 30. In fact, you're not going to be. That's like really fine. And so not even a matter of like success, but just a matter of like finding the place that you really love. You may not find the place that you really love or find like an extremely fulfilling career until you're, I don't know, however long it's going to take. I think what I was saying about like the not botching part is like, first of all, you're probably not. It's really okay. It's okay to make mistakes, even for the nonprofit that is counting on you, because like that's how we learn and that's how we grow. And like sometimes in nonprofits, to be honest, the stakes are lower because perhaps they're widespread. You know, then the audience isn't as widespread. Then again, I shouldn't even say that. In fact, I take that back. Sometimes the stakes are much higher if you're like delivering mosquito nets and like there are people whose lives are depending on the technology that you're building for like to manage the supply chain. Like, so actually, I take that back. But what I would want to say is like, don't be daunted. If the fear of botching it is going to keep you from like applying for those positions or seeking them out, then that is not the lesson I want you to take from that part. I think that's just a comfort. That's like a little benefit to working at the large tech companies, is that you can make these mistakes early, but it's okay if you do wind up making these mistakes even right after college. Like you're going to. That's totally expected. People know that when they're hiring junior engineers, they're like expecting them to like make mistakes. So don't let that fear like stymie your hopes and ambitions and career fulfillment wishes.
Awesome. Thank you for that answer. George, I hope that helped. And does anyone else have potentially an answer to that question or want me to repeat it?
I was just going to add, like seeking a mentor can help, especially like Aaron made a lot of good points. It's like, don't let those fears get to you, but we all know that like those fears can happen anyway. And if you have a mentor in the field, they can really help you like work through those times and help you figure out how to manage life. That it's a lot different when you leave college. So yeah, trying to find a mentor in the field that you're interested in.
Awesome. And our next question from the audience is, what is something, I like this question. What is something that an intern can do in a big tech company to affect positive change? If anyone has any answers to that or just thoughts.
What's the part 2 to that question?
The part 2 is, I also like this question a lot. Shout out to Tina. Is it possible to have a fully ethical tech company in a capitalistic society?
No.
No.
I think it's just that simple. So the thing about like, you know, a lot of the organizations that I have worked in and worked with, you know, as a contractor and as like a, you know, a third party with an agency, is that there's the main focus is the bottom line. And the main focus is how do we actually make money? How do we make, if it's public, how do we keep our board and shareholders happy, et cetera. And unfortunately, that leads to some really, really ugly practices. And I think one of the biggest things that has been really huge for me to really create that impact is find your people, find your allies, find people who actually have similar passions, and create an employee resource group or create some kind of, you know, collective within that organization. More often than not, a good manager, if you are fortunate to have a good manager, which unfortunately isn't that common, but there are a lot of really incredible people out there who are looking to create that same impact as you, who are now in leadership positions, but they, you know, when they're in middle management, they're caught between a rock and a hard place. They have to deliver certain things. They have to keep the team on goal. But I think one of the biggest benefits of sharing your thoughts and your real authentic ideas with your managers more often than not is that they may result in like having a side initiative or side project that you can work on that is a more fulfilling project than just, you know, delivering code all day every day that is looking to make money for the company.
Yes, yeah, definitely. And sorry, Tina, I'm gonna have to skip the rest of your question, or at least the first part, to move on. to another question, which is what kind of problems do you think tech is good for solving, and what kind of problems do you think tech cannot solve? And just a reminder that we have breakout rooms after this, so if there are any unanswered questions, feel free to ask them in the breakout rooms. But yeah, tech problem solving.
Okay, I'm gonna take this one too, if you don't mind. So as of recently, I was working on criminal justice reform technology. Now, we don't necessarily know of any organizations out there, tech companies that focus on building tech tools that are helping the criminal justice system, or the people who are trying to create reform within that system. And so data is one of the biggest challenges in criminal justice, and data integrity, data reliability, all of these different things are incredibly, we're talking about like legacy institutions that most, like courthouses, for example, one of the challenges is that most of their cases and their, all their paperwork is still filed away in actual paperwork, guys and ladies, actual paperwork in storage facilities. And so creating tools, for the practitioners on the field that will help them either track data or be able to, create efficiencies or create transparency. That would be a huge change. And I would have never thought about that until, actually seeing it. So there are definitely a lot of things that data can actually solve. And a lot of nonprofit organizations and institutions, government institutions, don't have tools. And there are tools that are not necessarily, there are no tools that are created for them to actually be able to create efficiencies or create process.
Yeah, for sure. And to add on, I guess the first thing you said about how there not being many tech companies or initiatives at all focused on just reforming the criminal justice system. That was definitely something that really drew us to CZI, because for what I know, that's the only or one of the very few organizations or like divisions of an organization that actually focuses on that. So like that's great. Although I think it's been obliterated in the past few days, but we'll see. And one more question is, I think one that will be really well suited maybe for Valerie. Matt, our dear Matt, is asking, with lots of social impact tech, especially in education, who you're building the service for, like teachers and students and parents, are often not the paying customers, such as school boards and administrators. So how do you scope out this product market fit, or make sure that you can actually reach and impact your target audience?
Yeah, that's a really good question. I mean, if I think about our organization, yeah, we're building a service for teachers, and it's the school sites that pay us. And they don't even pay us that much. We really actually try to subsidize most of that through donations so that we can get into schools that don't have a large budget. But all of that being said, like, how do we make sure we really reach our target audience? We are, I think we almost do it too much, but we do a ton of surveys and like constantly asking for feedback, and then not only asking for feedback, but we implement it. And like, we've reformed our product. I've mentioned we've been around for about 9 years, but our product now looks so different than it did the first year, and that it helps show the target audience that we care about their learnings. We want to make sure that it fits their needs. So we continue to do that. We even survey students. We don't survey kindergarten because it's kindergarten. It's hard to get a survey, but like we start from first grade up. We're asking them, specific questions about our product that can help drive our product management. So yeah.
That's awesome. And I guess if no one else has an answer to that, I'll move on to, I guess, one more really quick question, which is, what recruitment / screening / hiring practices do you guys use, or would you use to avoid biases in the tech world? Open for anyone, although I know that it's probably best suited for Ahmed.
This is a really heavy one for me. you know, there are definitely a lot of bias that go into hiring. And as I mentioned earlier, that's one of the reasons why I wanted to, you know, be in a place where I am at least opening the door for someone who's qualified to do the job, who otherwise would, you know, be passed over. And, you know, so I think it's just a matter of really creating this awareness around this institution, you know, really setting yourself up with realistic expectations. I mean, luckily there is a lot of racial equity awareness, a lot of work that is, you know, going towards that way. And there are a lot of organizations that are trying to be intentional about it. However, it really does take a lot of work and a lot of resources, and most organizations are not making it a priority because the bottom line is the priority. And so this is maybe second or third or fourth on their list. And so, but there is this, there, you know, a lot of the big tech companies, Google being one of them, was kind of moving towards a direction where, you know, they are accepting certifications and people who are self-taught or people who go through like, you know, coding programs and things like that to be able to now reach the same positions that were before requiring, you know, masters and PhDs and things like that. So that is a huge shift. I think you just as an individual, I think if you just show up as your authentic self, you will be able to see how people react to you. And I think that is something that is incredibly, you know, priceless. Your own intuition, your own ability to see the energy. And I know we're kind of moving into this you know, Zoom world as we're all on it right now. It's still very easy to see people's energy and people's gauge their interest and gauge their body language and things like that and how they respond to you. And so sometimes it's, and if you do feel like there is a sense of bias or you're not necessarily being given a fair shot, I think communicating that with your recruiter is huge. Because more often than not, let me tell you something about recruiters. Recruiters are your best friends. We fight for our candidates so hard, especially during debriefs. We are in the middle of those conversations with all of the interview panels and the hiring manager. And more often than not, actually 100% of the time, we are the last people communicating with the hiring manager. And so if you are able to share your experience fully unauthentically with your recruiter, they can actually advocate for you and really create that space where you are being treated fairly by possibly even giving you, if you feel like one of the panelists or interviewers was biased towards you, they can actually set up another interview with someone else. That doesn't cost them anything. That's actually, you know, really easy to do. So definitely be honest and direct with your recruiters.
Yeah, thank you. I think that's definitely very helpful to all of us that are like either going to be in the recruiting season or like are just finishing up or whatever. That is awesome. Okay, so we have 8 minutes left. So we're gonna go into breakout rooms, but before that, are there any final thoughts or anything from any of our panelists today?
We love you. Keep doing what you're doing. You're making the world a better place.
Yep.
Thank you guys, and thank you guys for doing the work that you do. So yeah, I'll pass it off to Ashley, and also fill out our feedback form, please, to the audience, please.
I'll drop it again in the chat right now. Awesome. So we're going to transition into our breakout room session. We do want to be respectful of everyone's time. So if you have to leave at 6, that's totally okay. I'm going to open up the breakout rooms, and it's going to be separated by kind of organization and panelists. So if you're interested in one or multiple fields, you can hop across breakout rooms. Definitely just be respectful of our panelists, of course, and you can feel free to connect with each other. So the LinkedIns for our panelists are going to be on the brochure, which I'll send right now. Again, please do fill out the feedback form and also connect with each other on LinkedIn, because like we're all UCLA students who are interested in social impact tech, so we should definitely stay connected with each other. So I will drop, that's the brochure as well as the feedback form. The brochure has LinkedIn info, and I will open up the breakout room so that people can start networking. We love to see it.
Yeah, also don't be scared. All the panelists are very friendly.